5, 4, 3, 1. Welcome to SwishCast, episode 4 for the week of December 12th, 2014. SwishCast is presented by Swish Analytics, where we discuss all things sports betting, sports news, and sports culture. We want this to be an entertaining place for you to get intelligent sports betting insights to hopefully make you a smarter, better, a more informed fan, and generally more knowledgeable about all things J.R. Smith. I am Bobby Scoff. I have in studio with me
Corey Beaumont.
And Zach Skelton.
And on the phone, we have our degenerate NBA and NFL expert, Ray Cementi. Ray, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Bobby. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us today. For all the listeners out there, it is Ray's birthday, so he is extra fired up about the New York Knicks, the New York Giants, and a number of other issues. We're going to try to keep the show very much on topic this week in terms of what we're covering. We're going to do an NFL and NBA rapid fire, as well as some NFL and NBA daily fantasy conversations mixed in there. Again, we want to keep it tight. Jumping into NFL rapid fire, let's start with last night's game. The Cardinals had a very kind of depressing win over the St. Louis Rams. 12-6 was the final score, correct? And our system, like the Cardinals, at the money line at plus 220. Cardinals were plus 6. Our system also liked them. We, as bettors, liked that line. You know, that was Cardinals being such big, relatively large underdogs in that game is kind of just a textbook example of Vegas public perception lines being made, right? The Rams are hot. They're coming in. Oh, everyone's also all of a sudden all down on the Cardinals. They don't have anyone at the QB position. And by no means am I endorsing them, to be someone that I think is going to win the Super Bowl per se. But at the end of the day, the Cardinals probably should not have been favored. Underdogs in that game. And it turned out to be a nice money line W of plus 220. Ray, did you watch any of that game? Do you have any opinion about that game?
I did. What I think is that Arizona is completely screwed going to the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, now you're down to your third-string quarterback. You have Logan Thomas, who was barely a starter in college at Virginia Tech, and Lindley, the other quarterback, who...
Lindley started some games a couple of years ago, am I correct?
He did, but... he's had his opportunity. He doesn't really have a strong arm. He's not really that accurate. He's just an okay backup quarterback. If you're going to get into it, especially down the stretch as Arizona goes into the playoffs, they're going to have serious offensive problems. And when you get into the postseason, generally all those teams have pretty solid offenses. Arizona, to me, is just too beat up. They're going to limp into the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah, they don't even have a running back at this one. They've got Stephon Taylor out there running the ball. With Ellington gone, they don't have anyone to go to.
Yeah, well,
Kerwin Williams, I know, has come in and be productive, and they actually went to him last night. I believe he outtouched Stephon Taylor 17-16, and most of those carries for Kerwin Williams came late in the second half. At the running back position. But, again, I think Arizona's just too beat up. I still bet you almost feel bad, right?
Right, like they made it this far. I mean,
just too beat up.
They are a great example of, I tweeted it out last night from our account. You need a good quarterback to win an NFL game, and both those teams did not have one, which is why the offense was so sparing, if you will, in that game. And it's actually kind of a larger story there where the quarterback position in the NFL is all of a sudden like no man's like there's a lot of empty, there's a lot of teams that need a good quarterback and not a lot of quarterbacks to be had. Like RG3 is going to get a lot of looks from a lot of teams, even though
even though his legs are shot, his confidence is shot, and he's a diva, and I could go on.
Yeah. So
change of scenery, baby. New York Jets, here we come.
Yeah, exactly. Change of scenery. Yeah, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen with the Jets? But all right. So last night, our algorithms systematically liked it, and that's kind of a great example of a game where, of course, the algorithms. The whole point of having a model-driven system like we do here at Swish Analytics. Is to take all the human bias out of it. And those lines that were, had Cardinals as pretty big underdogs last night were serious, public perception, kind of human perception lines, right?
Yeah, it was what the Rams had blown out two crappy teams back to back, the Raiders and the Redskins.
Right.
And they're going to go up against the best team in their division and beat them by 6 points.
Yeah.
Their defense has been performing better, but that was just Vegas trying to set lines to play against people's idea of, as you said, the Rams are hot. all of a sudden they look like a great team. Well, let's face it, they're not a great team. They haven't been a great team. They can play well at times, but overall they're not there.
Yeah, and this is the whole point of having a system like this. It only looks at the data. It doesn't look at all this BS kind of being whirled around in the media. And usually these kind of picks that our system makes that are like kind of crazy, and it kind of identifies a situation where Vegas is really trying to just get betting on even sides. I usually look at it and I say, okay, that's not that drastic of a pick. Like, I'm not going to tout that too much as something that's really special about our system. Of course, people would have had, whether it's the Broncos in a game or something like that. I will say, though, watching, we had a big storm here in San Francisco, so we were working from home yesterday, and watching a lot of SportsCenter and ESPN yesterday, people were all over the Rams to come into that game and kind of lay down, a huge W over the Cardinals and really put the Cardinals into a tailspin all of a sudden. That was the storyline from PTI to any of those shows on ESPN. All these guys, quote unquote experts, were all about the Rams yesterday. And I really liked, that this was one of the few instances where not only was it kind of a bold pick, but it was almost an obvious pick if you cared about data and not necessarily cared about, storylines. So, good win for the Cardinals. They will probably, like you said, Ray, with the quarterback spot being a big question mark there, even more than ever. I didn't know it can get any worse, but it has. I'm sure they're going to get some favorable lines over in the last 2 weeks of the season. Last 1 week of the season. Three. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're week 15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it will be interesting, and I think maybe there's some value there. Although who knows what the experts and the models say about a team that really doesn't have a quarterback. So, okay. So looking ahead to this weekend's NFL games, we've identified 2 or 3 games that we want to talk about. We want to keep it very focused on these. So I've kind of broken them out into different kind of picks in terms of a solid pick, just a pick that our system likes that, might not be so surprising, but is definitely a game that a lot of people are paying attention to. Our system really likes the Bengals, who are 8-4, at the Browns, who are 7-6. The obvious storyline surrounding this game is the fact that Brian Hoyer is no longer the starter in Cleveland, and Johnny Football will be making his first NFL start in a regular season game. So this is essentially a pick'em. The spread is 0. It's a pick'em, and our system very much likes the Bengals here to go in and beat the Browns pretty much straight up. Some of the factual kind of analytics behind our predictions: the Browns' rushing defense isn't that good. Both teams do rely on the run, and I think you're going to see some decent running coming out of the Bengals in this game. Both teams trend to the under 60% of the year. Our pick likes the under 44. Our system likes that pick. Basically, all of that said, what is, Ray, I'll start with you. What is your opinion on the Bengals and how they can pull a win out of this game, given the fact that Andy Dalton hasn't played that well, number one, but more importantly, how Johnny Manziel is kind of the wild card here?
Well, I got to tell you, I hate both these teams. If you go back to last week, I was all over Pittsburgh against Cincinnati because I just don't think Cincinnati is a very good team.
Right.
That being said, Cleveland ain't much better. Cleveland is a team, I can't believe the spread is what it is. I think if you were looking at this, I am better, which I am. This is a game, I'll even give you a score prediction. I think Cincinnati wins this game convincingly to the tune of 31-14.
Right.
If you look at experience wins, and I know Dalton has struggled, but offensively, Cincinnati is more. Even though they are a bit beat up, they're still a little bit more explosive than Cleveland is. Cleveland has a solid defense, but Joe Hayden's going to be locked up on AJ Green. The FanDuel pick of the week has to be Mohamed Sanu. I'll be taking him in all my FanDuel because I think him against Buster Screen, who struggles in coverage, struggles man-to-man against a big athletic wideout and Mohamed Sanu, that's going to be a matchup problem that Cincinnati is going to be able to continually exploit as that game goes on. And again, I think Johnny Football come in, makes 5 or 6 exciting plays a game, but he has not proven that he can be a consistent quarterback at the NFL level. A garbage TD and a blowout loss to Buffalo hasn't proved anything to me. It's exciting, but I think that it's the more experienced team with a little bit more talent. They'll be able to come in here and convincingly beat Cleveland at home in Cleveland.
All right, yeah. Our models agree. Our system is just from the moment those lines came out and when we kind of ran everything and went back and double checked and looked over all the games, our system is heavily on Cincinnati. I think lines aren't going to change too much in one direction. They were at one point, I think, Cincinnati -1. Is that correct?
Actually, since he's now dog at +1.
Okay, so since he's right. So Manziel being announced as the starter has actually caused a stir in the Browns' favor rather than against them.
Yeah.
A tiny bit at least, which it's like, and Ray, whether or not maybe I agree with you or anyone that's betting on this game agrees with you, at the end of the day, the point you kind of just made is just that, and that, Manziel has not proven anything, maybe good or bad, but he really, obviously he proved that he wasn't better than Brian Hoyer for X amount of weeks for them to call him the starter, at least in practice. And so I don't know how you can look at him as an advantage other than the fact that maybe, game plan wise, the Bengals really don't know defensively what to plan for, other than some QB spy stuff, right? Like, I don't,
Yeah, look, defensively they have tape of decades worth of mobile quarterbacks. It's not like this guy's the first mobile quarterback to ever step onto a football field.
Right.
And, Marvin Lewis is a good defensive coach. He was, going back to his days, in Baltimore when he was defensive coordinator on those Ravens Super Bowl teams. I don't think Manziel is going to present some type of X factor that Cincinnati hasn't seen before. So I think they'll be able to scheme against it. He'll make his, 5 or 6 exciting plays, but he's going to make boneheaded interceptions. He's going to make boneheaded mistakes. He's going to cost Cleveland this game. I don't really see Cleveland ever being in this game from the start to kickoff, I got to tell you.
All right. Well, it's a little bit of a bold prediction, but overall it's a pretty solid pick. Check out SwishAnalytics.com for all the in-depth information on this game and every NFL game coming up. But again, our system likes the Bengals at both the money line and the spread, and we like under 44. In general, these teams have trended under. All the data we have is pointing towards the under. I don't know, without getting into it too much, I think there's a general case that this isn't going to be some high-scoring, San Diego at Denver type game.
Yeah, so. Anytime two teams like these that rush the ball as much as they do, I think Cleveland rushes it the 4th most times per game, and Cincy's at 7th. Games, now the clock runs faster,
right.
There's fewer timeouts, and just generally the pace of play is slower, and that trends to unders.
Yeah, for sure. So we like the under. Check out the game at SwishAnalytics.com. The next game we're going to cover is a take the risk type game. So, if you want to put a low dollar wager on a high risk bet, which is probably going to be a money line type game this NFL weekend, it really was Arizona, actually. That was probably one of the safer high risk bets to make throughout the entire season. Arizona plus 220 on the money line. But we've highlighted another game for you, and that is the 2-11 Oakland Raiders at the 7-6 Kansas City Chiefs. Oakland is a massive underdog at, I think it's plus 450. Sorry, hold on one second. Yeah, plus 450 on the money line. Our system, not necessarily has Oakland winning this game, but identifies it as a game where it's appropriate to take a low dollar risk on the Raiders. Kansas City's lost 3 in a row, including a Thursday night game a couple of weeks ago to the Raiders, which Ray, you and I were actually at. The Raiders are coming off actually a big win over the 49ers, who are, dwindling, whatever you want to say about them. But at the end of the day, is this a little public perception again? Or, what's the case for, a smart, risky bet on the Oakland Raiders?
I got to tell you, the Oakland Raiders starting to have that look. They're starting to have that look.
What does that look? Is it like a Rams kind of look? Or is it like a...
It is that look of the fundamental building blocks to be a contender for the years to come. Derek Carr is a really, really good young quarterback. He's strong. He's big, about 6'3", 220, strong arm, mobile. You're starting to see them stay in games. They lost a couple of close games early by not a lot of points, but now they're starting to beat the 49ers. They're starting to get a little high. They're starting to have that look of a team that could week in and week out start to be a really good team. And look, if you project the AFC West going forward, Peyton Manning's at the end of his career. Philip Rivers is starting to get towards the end of his career. With the Raiders potentially moving to L.A. and Harbaugh potentially taking that job, which is the big rumor. I'm sure you guys hear it every single day in the Bay Area. The Raiders have the fundamental building blocks. And if you look at Kansas City, I just don't think Kansas City's a good football team. I really don't. Offensively, they are one of the worst offenses in football. How about this? You want that? Kansas City only one time this year Kansas City had a receiver or tight end go over 100 yards receiving.
Right.
Dwayne Bowe, their clear-cut number one receiver, still doesn't have a touchdown. They are the most vertically challenged offense I have seen maybe ever in my life.
Yeah. Do they still not have a touchdown to a wide receiver, or has that been debunked finally? I know that was going for a couple of weeks. Like, they still haven't.
I think that still stands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you have.
But with that leads Kansas City to stay in games. So, it's not like Kansas City's going to go in and blow anybody out. The game's going to be close. And if Derek Carr continues to make plays down the stretch like you saw against the 49ers, Kansas City might find himself in a world of pain late in this game.
Hey, Ray and I are standing in the pouring rain in crappy O.co Coliseum or whatever it's called, and the Raiders look pretty good. I mean, all things considered, the Raiders look pretty good. Now, they did then get blown out by the Rams like 52-0 the following week, correct? So, there's a little bit of grain of salt there, but in terms of all of the NFL action going on this weekend, a 5, 10, depending on your bankroll, small dollar wager on the Raiders is not the dumbest high-risk bet you can make throughout this entire season. So our systems like it. There's obviously plenty of reasons to like it and not like it, but I think with the data backing it, it's kind of a no-brainer, at least small dollar bet to make. So again, SwishAnalytics.com has all the information for that game, the underlying confidence levels for each of these bets, money line, spread, and point total, and all of the underlying data. Check it out now. Thirdly, our safe pick. So a pick, that you want some high confidence in, you want to win. You're trying to win some money this weekend. Our system likes the Vikings +9. The Vikings are 6-7. They're at the Detroit Lions, who are 9-4. Again, Vikings are +9. We have 4 out of 5 confidence stars on this spread bet. So our system, applies a confidence level of 0 to 5 stars, depending on how confident it is in the pick. 4 out of 5, obviously extremely high confidence. We project the real spread to be much closer to around Vikings +3, so around a 6-point gap between the quote-unquote real spread that we project and the Vegas line of +9. Minnesota has 2 straight wins over the Carolina Panthers and New York Jets. Not saying that's anything special. Why should we be confident that our system is correct and that the Vikings will cover a 9-point spread, which will possibly move within a point or two?
Yeah, it's actually gone down to about 8.5.
Okay.
I saw it some books. It's 8.
Okay.
So you're starting to see money come in and take that line.
Likely bottom of the barrel would end up somewhere around 7.5. But why can the Vikings cover a touchdown? Ray, if you want to start, I know you're pretty amped up. You texted me about this pick this morning.
Well, I have serious concerns if Matt Stafford is even going to make it through this game. He's already been sacked a career high 39 times. Their offensive line, Detroit, one of the worst in the NFL. They only average on the run 3.4 yards per carry. That's a really bad combination against any defense, let alone Minnesota, that has one of the best defensive lines in football that no one gives enough attention to. J.J. Watt this, J.J. Watt that. Everson Griffin has 12 sacks on defense. He is a stud. They get after the quarterback. The Vikings defense total has 38 sacks in the year, tied for third most in the NFL. They are going to blitz Stafford early and often. Detroit can't run. Reggie Bush has been in and out of the lineup.
I think he's back this week, though, right?
Yeah, but they're saying he's going to be limited, and so it looks like Joik's going to be the guy, and he hasn't shown, except for the occasional flash here or there, he hasn't shown to be a dependable target either.
Right. Yeah. Well, sorry, Ray. Go ahead. Vikings defense. I mean, it's a great point that has definitely gotten, I think, lost in a lot of the frenzy of this NFL season. If their defense is doing that well, their defensive line is playing that well.
They averaged the 5th most sacks per game.
Right.
I mean, Ray's right. It gets lost in the shuffle of talking about, their shall we say inefficiency in other areas of the game, but they have performed quite well.
Okay, well, a question coming out of most pundits to this type of pick would be, okay, yeah, they might keep it, they might keep the Lions relatively tamed, no pun intended, or maybe, I guess, pun intended probably. The Lions passing game will be tamed, relatively, comparatively to other, maybe other games that they've been in, but they're still going to put up some points. Is Teddy Bridgewater going to put up at least a couple of touchdowns to keep this one close? Like, what do you see out of Teddy Bridgewater that is, compelling or encouraging?
Well, I got to tell you, I think he's played well himself. He kind of passes the old eye test, right? I mean, he's another one who's a mobile quarterback with a strong arm. He's made some good decisions. He's kept them in some games. If they can move the football, which against Detroit they should be able to, Minnesota's going to be in this game. And again, just to flip it back, I know you asked about Bridgewater, but just to flip it back, just from Detroit having a poor running attack and a poor pass protection, I can't see Detroit being able to offensively move the ball with any consistency, not against Minnesota. And just on that alone, Minnesota's going to be in this game.
All right. Well, our system likes them to keep it within a touchdown. All the data is kind of pointing in that direction. Some good points here to back up a relatively quote-unquote safe pick for the Vikings, +9, +8.5, wherever that line moves to. As long as it doesn't dip below a touchdown, I think our system's going to like it. So we actually picked that as one of our 5 picks in the Las Vegas Hilton Weekly NFL Pick'em contest. You can check out information for this game. Where can you see it, Corey?
I believe it's called SwishAnalytics.com.
SwishAnalytics.com. Yeah. Well, it's easy for people to spell, so I gotta say it like that. All right.
When you put it that way, people remember it.
Yeah. This is for better or for worse. But all right. So and obviously for the other 10 plus games going on Sunday, check out all of the information, picks, analytics. There's some really good picks sprinkled throughout this NFL weekend. I think we're actually pretty happy about a lot of the predictions that the system has made. We're obviously going to be betting all of these games as we always do. But definitely some high-value information on the site, especially for one of the last weeks of the NFL season where teams are really, playing their hearts out to either make the playoffs or possibly trying out some new stuff if they're completely wallowing in the middle of nowhere like the Redskins. So our system actually likes the Redskins at the Giants, but we're not gonna get into that right now.
Colt McCoy, baby.
Yeah, Colt McCoy. All right, before we jump into the NBA, Zach, I want to turn it over to you for 3 NFL daily fantasy plays for this upcoming weekend. You guys already heard one out of Ray and Mohamed Sanu for the Cincinnati Bengals. Zach, you want to highlight quickly 3 players?
Yeah, we'll diving right in. There's Derek Anderson, QB for the Carolina Panthers. As everyone probably already knows by now, Cam Newton was involved in a car accident that left him with 2, I believe it was fractured transverse vertebrae.
Correct.
That will keep him out of the lineup this week. And while Derek Anderson hasn't exactly, lit the world on fire, he did perform well against these very same Buccaneers in Week 1. I think he had 2 TDs and 230 yards.
Right. Cam was out, with a rib or an ankle?
I think it was a rib injury. And he also has, 2 other passing TDs in his other 3 appearances, all of which happen to go to Kelvin Benjamin, and they seem to have a good connection together.
Yeah.
And more importantly, Tampa gives up the 24th most passing yards to opponents. Excuse me, the 6th most passing yards to opponents, and they allow the 17th most fantasy points to opposing QBs. So, for $5,000, which Anderson can be had for, he's a good value pick at QB if you want to spend your money elsewhere.
All right. Number 2.
Number 2 is actually a twofer in the Jets' Chris Ivory and Chris Johnson.
Right.
Anytime you have guys going up against Tennessee's rush defense, they're going to be good plays. The problem here is that they've kind of been splitting the load. They've more or less been getting equal carries. So the question is, who has the most upside? And I have to say it's probably Johnson, who, with the added impetus of going up against his old team, might, he's not going to truck anybody because the guy's a track star. Yeah. But, he could have a burst of speed through an open hole here or there. And, the Jets rush the ball the 3rd most in the NFL. I think it's like 31 times a game. And once again, it has to be reiterated, Tennessee is absolutely terrible against the rush. They allow the most yards to opponent rushing games, and I believe it's the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs.
Well, if you're going to deliver 2, for 2-for-1 situation and, let people decide which one to pick, I think the Chris Johnson going up against his former team is a nice little, puts him over the edge maybe.
Yeah, he's available for, I think it's $5,300. Okay. So, they make good flex or RB2 options this week. So, don't be afraid to give the Jets, who otherwise have nothing to offer and for fantasy players, a look.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Do you have any more? That's it?
Yeah, I got one more for you.
All right.
Don't you worry about that.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz, tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oof.
Yeah, I know. It's he hasn't looked great this year.
No, but Sanchez likes him.
Yes, exactly. Sanchez does like him, and Ertz has learned to sort of, Sanchez does have a bit of a trouble of underthrowing the ball from time to time, and he doesn't exactly lead his receivers well. But Ertz has shown a good ability to, track back to the ball. They have a good rapport, it seems.
Yeah.
And he's cheap. First and foremost, $5,100 for a tight end who we project to have, I think it's like 10.9 this week, against the Cowboys defense that gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to tight ends, and who were torched by Martellus Bennett in their last game. So, it's not a slam dunk by any stretch, but he could get a lot of looks this week, particularly because the Cowboys just struggle against tight ends.
Yeah, and I think
his snap count's going up too, which is huge.
Yeah.
He hit a high snap count early, then it kind of decreased in favor of Brent Selleck, and now it's shot back up since Sanchez has taken over.
Yeah, Brent Selleck, they thought he was, the future there at tight end, but he just hasn't looked like it. And yeah, exactly. They're going back to the guy they at least have some faith in.
I was going to say also, Sanchez definitely he seems like almost like a safety blanket type guy for Sanchez, which for a guy like Mark Sanchez could turn out to be, one of the only guys he goes throughout the game, if things aren't going right.
Sanchez is definitely a safety blanket kind of quarterback, which,
he sleeps with a safety blanket.
Exactly. He's sucking his thumb with it.
All right. Well, I said we would have 3 NFL daily fantasy plays for this weekend. We actually ended up with 5 with Ray throwing the Sanu in. So, again, quickly wrap those off for me.
Yeah, let's go through one more time. We've got Derek Anderson, QB for the Panthers. The 2 Chris's, Chris Johnson and Chris Ivory for the New York Jets. And Zach Ertz, tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Great. And you can find daily fantasy optimized lineups for FanDuel NBA at SwishAnalytics.com. You can also find NFL and NBA fantasy projections on a daily basis for all players at SwishAnalytics.com. And anything else you really need to, where should they go, Corey?
SwishAnalytics.com.
SwishAnalytics.com. Okay. Cool. Thank you, Zach. So that kind of wraps up our NFL talk. Again, you can find everything on our site. We're going to jump into NBA Rapid Fire. So I have written down, this is really an all Eastern Conference affair in our NBA Rapid Fire today. We will get into some West stuff towards the end. But I want to start out with, and we've covered a bunch of teams so far in terms of teams to quote unquote look out for over the next couple of weeks, teams that could present themselves as value plays over the next couple of days or weeks, and also teams to stay away from a value standpoint. And we've talked through, kind of a beating a dead horse with the Lakers, the Timberwolves, the Bucks, teams like that. So I'm going to jump into some maybe non-NBA headlines, but that are very interesting from a betting perspective. First, I want to talk about the Atlanta Hawks, who are 15-6. They are leading the Southeastern Conference in the NBA. They are on an 8-game win streak. To be fair, not too many of those wins are over great teams, save for the Pelicans and the Heat. They did beat the Wizards a little bit earlier in the season before that. They are 62% at the spread. First question, Ray, how are the Hawks doing this? Especially because Al Horford hasn't played necessarily that well. Kyle Korver's on fire. This Dennis Schroeder guy who is now all of a sudden in late game situations becoming they're kind of basically just playing 2 point guards and playing him and Teague. What do you like about the Hawks? And can they continue to kind of beat teams at least in the Eastern Conference?
Absolutely. First of all, the Eastern Conference is not still a struggling conference. Real disparity between them and the West, right? If you talk about Atlanta themselves, they're a young, exciting basketball team. Jeff Teague's a really good point guard. I mean, when are we going to just stand up and say, wow, this guy has a chance to be a really great player in this league, and maybe even an all-star? You almost feel sorry for the kid. I mean, if he was in Atlanta, if Jeff Teague was on the Knicks, would he be all over the TV every 5 seconds?
Yeah. Atlanta, just quick tangent. Atlanta has a weird, even though it's the hub, all these guys love Atlanta in the offseason. People love to go to Atlanta. Dwight Howard is notoriously from there and loves going back there and everything. But at the end of the day, they do not get a lot of respect or love or attention from really anyone else in the league.
Well, I mean, part of the intention part is that Atlanta has probably the worst fan base in the NBA. Atlanta itself is a transient city. They don't have a big fan base. All the teams there struggle to generally pull people through the turnstile. So, if Atlanta was a bigger market, maybe they'd get more attention. But again, it's a young, exciting team. Like you said, Kyle Korver's played outstanding. Jeff Teague's a really, really good point guard. And in a weak conference, they have a chance to be a solid 6 or 7 seed.
Yeah, and I think in terms of not getting respect from Vegas, not having any superstars on their team is definitely, helps them, and in this situation hurts them in terms of they just don't get big lines. So a couple of no-respect lines during their win streak over the past week or so. They were 1-point underdog versus Indiana. They were a 4.5-point dog versus the Heat. They were a 3-point dog versus the Pelicans, all games which they won. No, not necessarily saying they should have been favored versus the Pelicans or maybe even the Heat, but they're covering these lines at a 62% clip, and will it stop or will they continue? And the one thing we want to look at is coming up for them on their schedule. So they have a home and away at Orlando. Then they start a pretty aggressive trip, which is they have the Bulls at home, and then they go visit the Cavs, the Rockets, and the Mavs, and then they come back home and play the Clippers. Ooh. So tough stretch by all means, but which of those games could they win? They will be dogs in most of those games, except for the ones versus the Magic. The games versus the Bulls, at the Cavs, at the Rockets, at the Mavs versus the Clippers. Which of those games do you think they can win, or they have the best shot of winning, and we can possibly look for as some value plays over the next couple of days? Ray?
I would have to think Dallas. I know Dallas is playing well, but I would have to think Dallas is Houston. Cleveland obviously is a pretty hot team right now. I believe you had mentioned the Clippers, who I just think is a supremely more talented team than Atlanta. But I would have to say Houston or Dallas. That's a tough stretch, though. I got to truthfully be honest. I really don't like them in any of those games.
No.
But if they're going to knock someone off, Houston or Dallas.
Yeah, you think the teams that they have a better shot at are the ones that are possibly not going to, play them as well defensively. Obviously, the Bulls are going to be all over them, and the Cavs have definitely picked it up from a defensive standpoint. The Rockets and the Mavs are definitely more offensive-minded teams. And Dwight probably will be back by the time they play the Rockets. We're not 100% sure, but yeah. They're definitely going to have some favorable lines, and at least to cover the spread. You got to imagine those games versus the Rockets, Mavs, and Clippers, and the Cavs, as well. They're going to get into, 4, 5, 6 point underdog lines.
Yeah, I could see 5.5 consistently.
Right. So,
but it often gets overlooked that, they are perceived as a team that can shoot hot on any given night, but can be inconsistent. Jeff Teague, he is a good player, but his problem has been consistency.
Yeah.
The thing that often gets overlooked is their scoring defense. They give up the 9th fewest points in the NBA. I think it's like 98 a game, but no one really talks about it. It's obviously they play in the East, so that number's probably depressed by that. But they've shown flashes of being able to compete.
Yeah.
And with their shooting, they can win on any given day.
Ray, have you seen any action of Schroeder, whatever his name is?
Well, I remember him. I believe he was a Michigan kid, wasn't he? I forget where he played his college hoops. But,
I think he was in Germany for a little while. I know that. That's where he picked up his little blonde streak in his hair.
But look, I have seen him. I think he gives them just another guy who can shoot. Which they need. I think, I'm not going to sit here and go on and on about Atlanta, but I think Atlanta is just a young, exciting team with some talented players that can, again, be a solid 6 or 7 seed. I mean, they're not a great team, but they're not the worst team. And night in and night out, they will probably be in most basketball games they play.
Right.
Here's a little tidbit about Schroeder. I've just assumed it's Schroeder.
Yeah.
Quote, widely regarded as one of the best talents in German basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I suppose, high praise.
Well, I guess he went over there, which a lot of these guys do when they go international, and you become the focal point of the scoring part of the team, and you just take over. You're scoring, 30, 40 points a game. So,
well, he also is German. I assume you know that. Yeah,
What is he?
Was born in Germany.
Next Dirk.
Yeah, Dirk, yeah.
Schroeder is the next Dirk. All right, you heard it here first. Schroeder, the next Dirk Nowitzki. He's going to be the best international player to ever play the game in the NBA. No, but after the home and away versus Orlando. Okay. Well, after the home and away with Orlando, they're going to go on a tough stretch like we laid out. I think look for some advantageous lines there. I would bet that our system is going to be all over them, at least at some point throughout that stretch, as an underdog on the money line or at the spread. So keep a lookout for the Hawks until they cool down. And you know what? Maybe a loss for them might not be the worst thing from a Vegas standpoint. Maybe gets them some serious 6-7 point lines, which you got to jump all over. Staying in the Southeast, the Wizards are also 15-6. They have had a relatively easy schedule. They did lose games to the Cavs and the aforementioned Hawks. My first bullet point here before we jump into the Wizards from a betting standpoint, am I crazy, or is John Wall playing himself into a legit MVP conversation? I know it's early.
He is. I am driving that. I am driving.
Well, let me set it up for you. Hold on. Let me set it up, Ray. So I know it's very early in the season, so talking any kind of NBA MVP is a little bit of a wash. But right now, Steph Curry, James Harden, Anthony Davis are really the three names that are getting thrown around from an MVP standpoint. Davis's team, a lot of people, although I will say fairly enough, a lot of the news organizations who were all over him to begin the season are backing off the gas a little bit because the Pelicans are looking like already it's just going to be very hard for them to make the playoffs, which for a lot of people is hard to digest a guy that's not going to make the playoffs being the most valuable player. Curry, is on fire. He had some hiccups over the last couple of games, but in general, he's probably the front runner. Harden's right there behind him because Harden has at least become a non-liability on the defensive end, and he continues just to light it up. He had 44 points last night. He's a stat monster. Daily fantasy-wise, even though his salary continues to climb, he also does his output. So our lineups our system has liked him in our daily fantasy lineups. However, yes, John Wall has been in the news because he is playing better, but I think he's playing so well that he should be considered an MVP candidate. Ray, what do you like out of John Wall, other than him averaging like more than 10 assists over the past 6 or 7 games, I think?
And exactly that is what I want.
Yeah.
For the past couple of years, everyone took him down. He can't shoot. He can't shoot. He can't shoot. He can't shoot. Rajon Rondo can't shoot either, and puts triple-double stat lines up almost every night the man sits on the court. He is a young Rajon Rondo. That's what John Wall is. 10 assists, 10 steals. I think he might. You might want to double-check me on this. I believe he's leading all point guards in steals per game.
Yeah.
I believe.
I think he is as well.
And look, if you have 10 to 12 points and you have 10 steals, which you're creating points off, and you're having 10 or plus assists, I'll take that. That is exactly what I want my point guard to actually do.
Yeah.
I don't want him to take a ton of shots like Westbrook. I want him to be a triple-double demon. He's Rajon Rondo. He's a young Rajon Rondo, and I love it.
But I think you can make the argument he can score probably better than Rondo, right? I know Rondo is really crafty around the hoop, but in crunch time minutes, you saw the game the other night. I forgot who they were playing, but John Wall has this step that he just blows guy-bys and he can finish at the rim. You got to think he's a little bit better of a scorer and shooter than Rondo.
Better driver of the lane.
Okay. Yeah.
But the much better driver of the lane. But again, he's not a significantly better offensive player than Rajon Rondo. And again, I just like stat line comparisons. And he's Rajon Rondo with a better drive. How about that?
Yeah.
But when was the last time a guy who averaged less than 20 points per game won the MVP? Ever?
I don't know.
I mean,
it's interesting.
It's an academic question at this point. But can a guy who just doesn't put up the points per game really enter that conversation legitimately? I mean, I value assists as much as the next guy, and that's arguably it's
what
more.
About the steals?
No, I mean you're right.
He's averaging 18 points.
Yeah, I'm saying under 20 though per game. I mean 2
points. Come on.
Well,
his plus minus is 6.
It's a perception issue though. I mean, if you're people look at points first and foremost.
Hence Kevin Durant winning the MVP, and then LeBron kind of. Now LeBron did have a little bit more of a bolstering. Like Kevin Durant was just a scorer, right? And, he's not. You wouldn't call him an assist guy, although he has improved his shareability with the ball. But
I would agree, at least in my MVP award aside, which tends to go to the guys with the best stat lines.
Yeah.
I tend to be of the opinion that MVP should be the guys who do the most for their team. Who without them, their team would not produce. And in that sense, I totally agree. I mean, 10.4 assists per game, 2.1 steals per game. He does have a bit of a turnover problem, but he sort of comes and goes. It comes with him, being a driver and a distributor.
Yeah.
It really comes down to how you perceive MVPs for any sport. And I tend to be of the opinion that it's the guys who do the most for their team, not the guys who just pad their stats the most.
Right. And so all of that said, like I said, their schedule has been relatively easy up until this point. They are playing the Clippers tonight as a 5-point underdog, 2.5 points. Our algorithms actually like Washington bets in that game for both the money line and the spread. The real question is, are they for real? Especially if they're going to come out, they're going to start playing. I looked at their schedule. They actually are continuing a little bit of easy opponents, but eventually they're going to go through some tough stretches, which I think will be good. Maybe a loss or two can bring some value their way in terms of Vegas lines. Can they hold it up versus good teams? Are they for real? Ray, you think the Wizards are for real? I know everyone incarnated them last year as, they finally made it into the playoffs, got past the first round type deal. They brought in Paul Pierce. Are they for real? If so, which if your answer is going to be yes, then I think in general our whole theme here is that there will be value on the Wizards after they do take some losses.
Yes, and yes. I mean, first of all, I think they are for real. I mean, Bradley Beal is a great shooter.
Yep.
I really like what Paul Pierce can do from a veteran, savvy scorer, do it all kind of standpoint. And they're still a tough defensive basketball team. So
you an Otto Porter guy or what?
Otto Porter Jr., my man from Georgetown. Yeah, I am. I think he's a good swing man. He's a classic swing man. But I think the Wizards are for real. So yeah, I mean, to your point, night in, night out, I think they're going to be a good team.
It'll be interesting to see what happens when Nene is back fully healthy and they can finally get Humphries out of that lineup, putting up 20 minutes a game.
Hey, Humphries from a daily fantasy perspective has been a great value play. He's falling off now. His salary has risen too.
Yeah, and he's trending down just in production-wise.
But hey, Humphries is a good pickup for them. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, he gives them something off the bench, particularly with Nene, who does have injury history. He just can't seem to stay on the court for an extended period of time.
Well, so
and Gortat, we never talked about Gortat. I mean, that guy's.
I know. I always admit this, and I admitted this last week. I'm not a fan of ugly basketball. I'm the typical NBA fan that you hate, and so Gortat just doesn't excite me. Like, his jump shot is ugly. He is ugly. His haircut is ugly. He's an ugly mother effer.
Give me mean, ugly guys every day.
He's good. The Polish Hammer. Yeah. All right. So Washington is for real. They probably will get tested and lose some games when they do go through some tough stretches of good opponents. At that point, we recommend you looking for value on them coming out of those games. I'm sure at some point throughout this year, we're going to get some media hoopla around, the Wizards have dropped off, when John Wall goes through a stretch of 3 games not playing well or whatever. It's crazy how much the media affects these lines and public perception, but be on the lookout for it. Keep Washington in your list of teams to watch. And Clippers tonight will be actually a really good test kind of for this conversation. So maybe we'll come back to this next week and talk some more Wizards. Next I have the Brooklyn Nets, who are 8-12. Are they uber underachievers or what? They just traded Andre Kirilenko to the 76ers. They got forward Brandon Davies in return. And more importantly, I think $3.4 million and almost $1 million trade exception. They just signed Darius Morris. Cool, bro. I have written down. And most notably in the news this week, it came out that pretty much every one of their starters is up on the trading block. So that includes Joe Johnson, Lopez, and Deron Williams. Ray, I have to ask you: is Lance coming home? Is this all being set up for Lance to make his comeback to the New York area?
Well, I gotta tell you, let's start here. When I was in studio a couple weeks ago, I was jumping up and down. Brooklyn, get right game. This organization is hell bent on making me look like an idiot.
Well, did they play the Spurs, right? When you were at that Spurs game, or what game did you go to?
They did. I was at the San Antonio Spurs game. They had won that game in overtime, but it's like. Yeah, they are the underachieving basketball team. When is Brook Lopez going to step forward and be the elite all-star center that we've seen flashes of?
When he gets a new foot put on him.
Yeah, really. He needs to cut that hair and get a new foot.
I agree. Yeah, it's the most frustrating thing to watch. Deron Williams he's inconsistent. Joe Johnson's inconsistent. This team is just a mess.
Hey, listen, Brook Lopez aside, my issues with Joe Johnson and really with Deron Williams, I mean, the $100 million man over there, he has a crazy penthouse in Brooklyn. I remember you sent me some pictures of it, Ray. Like, what is he doing? Like, what happened? Is it just injury? All those guys are just injuries? Joe Johnson doesn't have the injury bug. The other two do. But what's wrong there? And, could we see some value on them quickly? Sorry, I don't mean to hog it, but they have a very East-heavy upcoming schedule. They're playing the 76ers, the Hornets, the Heat, the Raptors and the Cavs, and then the Pistons, the Nuggets, the Celtics, and the Pacers. So, save for the Raptors and the Cavs 2 in a row, other than that, it looks like some winnable games. What do you think? Is it just does it need to be shaken up in order for them to start winning, or what needs to happen?
Blow it up. Blow it up. Blow the entire, honestly, 100%. I think you have to go back to the drawing board with this. Because, look, these guys aren't young either. I mean, Deron Williams isn't a young basketball player. Joe Johnson's already in his early 30s. These guys already have a lot of burn on their legs. So, the window for this team is closing and it's about to be closed. And it's a shame because this is a team that's going to have a lot of talent that will never even come close to the expectations that people put on them. And I'm looking straight at Brook Lopez.
Well, and from a betting standpoint, then it makes it really hard to put your finger on it. Are they a value team? Like I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Brooklyn as a possible value play, right? Like a team that, hey, they have the talent, they just need to put it together. It's early in the season. Well, lo and behold, it's 2 weeks later, and now you're telling me to blow it up.
Yeah, because they haven't put it together. That was the important caveat there, and it just hasn't materialized.
Totally agree. So, and I say is Lance coming home, but no joke. That is a rumor that has been floated around for a while. Obviously, he's had some bumps in the road thus far in Charlotte. Do you see that as it looks like the Karolinko thing. I know he was having some internal issues. He's saying he might not even play ever again, but is that possibly what they're setting up for, or do you think they're setting up just to clean house in a much broader sense and not necessarily bring back Lance? Not like he's going to be the savior also.
I mean, I would have to imagine they're setting up the clean house. You can't look at that roster top down and say, okay, this is the roster that's going to go deep into the playoffs, let alone win a championship.
Do you like Lionel Hollins?
You know what? I actually think Lionel Hollins is actually a pretty good coach. I mean, you saw what he did in Memphis, but again, it's just inconsistent play. You have a ton of money considered to Deron Williams, which is probably the most overrated guard in the league. I just think they're in really, really bad shape. And I got news for you. I can't right now give you a fix for the Brooklyn Nets. That's how far this ship has sailed. I don't have no idea what they would do.
All right. Well, from a betting standpoint, then the only thing I can really come out of this conversation with is probably stay away for a little bit. Either they get it right or they don't, and they end up getting some crazy lines where you have to take them. But other than that, maybe stay away.
You want to make good, smart bets, and going near Brooklyn is just not that. It's just not smart. You don't know what you're getting on the team on a night in, night out basis. That's the problem.
All right. Jumping to the Western Conference quick, we're going to cover one team. That's the Clippers, who are 16-5. Like we said, they're playing the Wizards tonight. They're on a 9-game winning streak, as apparently a lot of teams are in the NBA. The Hawks, the Cavs, a couple of other. I'm sorry, well, the Cavs have been snapped now, but the Warriors are on a 14-game streak.
14, yep.
Yeah.
So the 16-5 Clippers, they're embarking on an East-heavy schedule. They're only 48% at the spread, and that's probably due to some of their earlier games where they really weren't gelling as they are now. Can we expect them to start covering more is my question. But in general, Ray, upcoming, they have the Wizards, the Bucks, Pistons, Pacers, Nuggets, and the Bucks again. It looks like they could easily extend this 9-game winning streak to 14, 15
I don't know.
games.
Fear the deer.
Is that a thing?
Yeah,
is that real?
Fear the deer. That was my alma mater, Fairfield. We were the Stags. Fear the deer. But seriously, you're right. The Bucks are definitely a contender, especially twice in a couple of game span. But what do you like about the Clippers? You'll know they'll be favorites from a money line standpoint, but at least getting value either from them at the spread or maybe on the other team. What do you think?
They're just so damn talented. I mean, aren't they? Blake Griffin really is a special basketball player. DeAndre Jordan's a heck of a center. Their front court really is the best front court in the NBA, at least right now, in my opinion. I would have to think. When you have the ability to score from the post down there, when you have the ability to rip down rebounds and play great defense, as DeAndre Jordan does, and of course Lob City, right? I mean, they're just a really, really talented basketball game. And whenever the Clippers and Warriors get in the same court, as we'll start to see now as the season progresses more, there is nothing more exciting right now, product-wise, in the NBA than those games.
Oh yeah, must watch TV for sure when the Warriors are playing anyone, especially when it's Warriors Clippers. So we have the Clippers ranked number 1 in our Swish Power rankings heading into tonight.
Have they actually gone up to 1 now?
Yeah.
Huh?
So they surpassed the Spurs and the Warriors right behind them. Obviously you can make the case that the Warriors should be number 1, but
the Warriors have been on a tear in our rankings. They were like number 1 pretty much for 2 weeks straight, minus like a small slip for where the Clippers snuck in there once. But they're jockeying it out up there.
Yeah, well, the Clippers have snuck back in. Definitely, we should watch them. I think we can expect them to start covering more. Like I said, they'll be big money line favorites where you probably don't want to, you don't want to. It's going to be wash and minus 250, minus 300. Where it's really not
get juiced out either way.
Right, not really appropriate to make any kind of major wager unless you're, Floyd Mayweather or someone with a huge bankroll. However, I'd like to pose the opposite question then. Are there anyone, so the people they play, Wizards, Bucks, let's say the Bucks, right? You said fear the deer. The Bucks will likely be a relatively heavy underdog when they play the Clippers. Probably a big money line, definitely a large spread. Out of all those teams, do you think the Bucks are the one that you might want to place a high risk, low dollar wager on to maybe upset the Clippers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why?
I would
length?
think just because I think the Bucks are actually coming up as a pretty talented team.
Yeah.
So it's I think they have a chance to make noise themselves, especially. So I think that especially those two games like that, so close together.
Yeah.
I could see them sneaking in and knocking out the Clippers on the night.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The Bucks are just a team of guys with really long arms. Like everyone on the team is so long, it's crazy. So I mentioned our Swish Power Rankings. Again, you can find those at swishanalytics.com. We have the Clippers are ranked number 1 this week, which is, I think anyone can make the case for Golden State being number 1, of course. But in general, our top 10 in whatever order you like is the Clippers, Spurs, Warriors, Blazers, Mavs, Memphis, Toronto, Cleveland, Chicago. So, none of those are really surprising. There's definitely a huge disparity in the NBA this year just because the East and West is such a night and day situation. It's really interesting from a betting standpoint when you see teams, like we said, the Clippers are now embarking on an East Coast trip, and there's going to be vice versa where guys are, Eastern teams are going to start traveling out west for these 3, 4, 5 game spreads where they're, playing night in and night out great teams. And you have to pay attention to that stuff as a bettor because public perception carries over game. So someone like the Clippers who are, they're on a 9-game winning streak, right? And eventually it's going to get snapped, and you got to think the Bucks or someone of the like has at least an opportunity to do so. So you want to be on the right side of it when it happens. It's obviously not as easy to identify, which is why we've built a system that takes millions of data points into consideration and crunches them millions and millions of times while you're sleeping at night. And when you wake up, you have a nice little warm pie of delicious picks, predictions, and analytics to feast on throughout your workday. So you can find that little warm pie at the SwishAnalytics.com kitchen. Zach.
Very, very poetic of you, buddy. I appreciate that.
That was good. I like that.
Zach.
Can't wait to have a hot slice.
All right, before we sign off here, I'm going to get Zach to give us 3 quick NBA daily fantasy plays, and these are much more in general, not necessarily for tonight's games, but like I said, we have optimized lineups. We are actually releasing our Optimus tool today. Optimus is our NBA and eventually NFL daily fantasy optimized lineup tool. It gives you a number, probably 3 to 5 lineups on a daily basis of high, medium, low risk lineups in terms of the variance that you can expect from guys' outputs. So guys that might, have a higher variance of the kind of output they have on a night over night basis will be in a high risk lineup, et cetera, et cetera. Along with that, we will have in-depth stats for every single NBA player on a nightly basis, tracking their salaries over time, how the team they are playing defends against their position, how many fantasy points on average that team lets up to that position, things like that. So it's probably the most in-depth daily fantasy optimized lineup tool you can find on the web, and it is run by our Optimus engine, which we have been building over the past couple of months. So you can check that out. But there are guys in these lineups that kind of pop up night over night. Zach, you want to highlight some of those guys?
Yeah, well, the first one, going back to the Brooklyn Nets a little bit, is Mason Plumlee. I know he's not a great player, but he's not. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But he's cheap first and foremost. I mean, he's averaged around $4,100 a night, and as long as Brook Lopez continues to sit until he gets that bionic foot he needs, he's going to put up decent numbers. I mean, he put up 23.6 the other night, fantasy points that is. And he can consistently get you 20 plus as long as he sees minutes in the 20 to 25 range, which once again you got to watch. As long as Lopez is out, he'll continue to see those minutes. But for this weekend, he's got favorable matchups against the Sixers tonight and the Hornets, I believe, on Sunday. And the more minutes Plumlee gets, the more opportunity he's going to have to put up 20 points. Which anytime a guy is worth $4,100, drawing a salary of $4,100, if you can get 20, 25 points out of the guy, great value pick.
Right, anything in that salary range. Ray, do you remember if him or his brother was on Team USA, at least in like the training camp? I know they got cut, but I forgot which Plumlee brother was there.
It was Miles. It wouldn't have been Mason. It's Miles and Mason Plumlee. It would have been Miles Plumlee.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't have that pedigree. Anyway, okay.
Number 2 is Ed Davis, power forward for the Lakers.
Yeah.
There you go. Bobby's a huge Lakers fan when he's not rooting for his Knicks.
No, I want to see Kobe have some kind of supporting cast, and Ed Davis is an upgrade over my most hated player in the NBA, Carlos Boozer.
Most
I
hated.
can't get enough of that video. I can watch him yell Mitch Kupchak all day.
Oh my God, how awesome is that coming off the floor? I know. I really hate Carlos Boozer, and I really hate Jeremy Lin, and
Well, what's there to like about Jeremy Lin?
nothing. But like Ed Davis, at least from a supporting cast role, I know he probably shouldn't be a starter, but I think with the minutes he's getting, he's going to be a 10 and 10 guy. Hence why you were mentioning him. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right off the bat, his value comes from the fact that he's just been installed as the starter. And anytime a guy who's drawn a salary below $5,000 and has just been upgraded to a starter position, has value written all over it. Until that salary starts to creep up, which it will over time, but until that salary gets into the $5,000, $6,000 range, value across the board. Particularly on a team like the Lakers, who, other than Kobe and maybe your boy Swaggy P, just don't have guys who are really going to go out there and put up consistent numbers. Whereas Davis, he's got the potential. He's averaged 19.7 fantasy points this season, and that includes coming off the bench, which is great for a bench guy.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a championship basketball team with a guy named Swaggy P. It's just not going to happen.
No, it's not.
But yeah, there are some high value plays to be found in the mix of that mess.
Well, yeah, there's always value plays on bad teams because guys are going to have to try and step up and make something, or at least maybe try to earn themselves off that team to another actual contender.
Yeah.
Davis right now, he's $4,600. That value will stick for probably a week, maybe 2, depending on the tracking we've seen.
Right.
And he's got the Spurs tonight, which isn't a great matchup. They're about a middle of the road team against forwards. But he can put up solid numbers. He can put up good rebound and point numbers on any given night. He's not going to get you much more than 10 points, 10 rebounds. But those are solid numbers for a guy who's has the salary he has, which makes him a good power forward 2 option.
Yeah, and like you said, on bad teams, there's always value to be had. I think for him, he's one of the very, very few guys on the Lakers who has some upside that could get better. Maybe he hasn't hit his ceiling type deal. I think other guys on that team, you just look at them and you're like, oh my God. So,
yeah, train wreck otherwise.
Yeah. All right, number 3?
Number 3, is Tyler Zeller, another guy like Davis who's just been installed as a starting center for the Celtics. And, he's looked great so far, taking over for Kelly Olynyk, who himself, struggled after sort of an early stretch where he performed well. But Zeller looks to be the starting center for the Celtics for the foreseeable future, barring any dramatic drop in production that might mess up their rotation.
Right.
And his salary definitely doesn't reflect that status yet, just like Davis. He's actually cheaper than Davis. He's going for $4,200. And he's averaging 12.6 points per game and 9 rebounds over his last 5 games. So, once again, until that salary starts to creep up and sort of match the minutes he's getting, he's going to have value.
All right.
On your point, Zeller coming out of Indiana, I thought his offensive game was very underrated by draft scouts. I actually really like that pick for the Celtics. I thought, it's actually really funny that you say that he's averaging 12.6 points a game because I'm not shocked by that. And I watched a lot of his college ball in Indiana, and he's a very good offensive player. He's got a decent shot. He's decent in the post. He'll be a pretty good center for them going forward.
Yeah, kind of ironic. We have brothers, Plumlee, Zeller. We have a bunch of NBA brethren in the daily fantasy picks today. So very cool. Thank you, Zach. Definitely check out, like I said, Optimist. We're going to be releasing it later today, Friday, December 12th. It really will be the one-stop shop for all your daily fantasy needs for FanDuel and NFL and some other, DraftKings, some of those other guys coming soon thereafter. Lastly, I want to sign off with Ray. I'm going to let you go, but why don't you give me a 60-second rant about the New York Knicks, who are visiting the Boston Celtics tonight. The Knicks are 4-20. The Celtics are 7-13. Celtics are a heavy favorite, and I'm sorry to say that our system does not want to go near the Knicks.
The New York Knicks could not beat my grandpa's community retirement team. They couldn't. They can't beat anybody. I'll tell you what, they should be ashamed of themselves. J.R. Smith, Carmelo Anthony, now Carmelo Anthony. Well, the last option is a knee surgery that was ended. As soon as I hear that, that train is never late.
Is his knee really hurt, or is he just like...
I'm waiting for the Knicks to shut him down. And you know what, Bobby? They absolutely should. They're 4-20. They're a complete joke, and they're embarrassment to the city. Trade J.R. Smith now, right now. Next plane out of JFK, he's on it. Put him on it.
What are you getting for J.R. Smith?
Yeah, where's JR going?
Yeah, is it for Copeland?
Who knows? Take whatever you can get.
Okay.
Because this team needs to tank. The fix is this: you're 4-20. Shut Anthony down, lose games, and I'll go right up to the NBA store in New York City right now and go get my Jaleel Okafor New York Knicks jersey.
Yeah, the problem with tanking in the East, and you're right, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, I don't know how serious. I thought Carmelo was just kind of sitting out, just being kind of a little
Diva.
a little diva. You know, I heard all those rumors that him and Hardaway were, getting after each other. I thought he was just sitting out, kind of being a diva. Do you think? Have you heard anything that might be more serious, or you're just waiting for that in terms of being a very pessimistic Knicks fan?
I'm just waiting for that because I've seen this story before. I know this trade. Like I said before, this trade is never late. They're going to shut him down. And they should. Look, I mean, realistically, if he has knee concerns and you're 4-20, and this is the superstar that you locked up for hundreds of millions, $130 million, whatever that deal was, why would you continually play him every night? Shut it down. You're going to trade J.R. Smith anyway because he doesn't fit a triangle offense or what Derek Fisher or Phil Jackson want to do at all.
Yeah.
Trade him. Shut down Melo, lose games, because guess what? This is a pretty deep draft.
Yeah.
I mentioned Okafor joking around half-heartedly, but, Miles Turner is in this draft, the big center of Texas. He's a real big center, a good offensive kid, grabs the board. It's a pretty deep draft. So, and then all the talent that will be coming out of Kentucky. So I think you tank, you get yourself a high pick, shut Melo down. There's no reason to expose him to a serious knee injury. And I think that's at least that's the start to fix and right the ship and the mess that is the New York Knicks.
Right. Well, it's very hard, and I kind of agree, and who knows how it's going to end up, but it's very hard almost to tank in the East because of how bad everyone is. That
you're really going to out-tank the Sixers?
Like the Celtics, right? The Celtics are 7-13, and they could very likely make the playoffs in the East, and so it's very hard to, can you out-tank the 76ers? So we will see.
They have it down to an art form up there in Philly.
Well, there's your weekly Knicks negative rant from the SwishCast. We appreciate everyone listening. You can, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I will say, just going back, talking about daily fantasy plays. Speaking of the Knicks, Tim Hardaway Jr. could be a guy to watch in the next couple of weeks, particularly if Melo gets shut down.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, he put up 29.6 in his last game. I mean, he just hasn't seen the minutes yet. I mean, his high in the last 10 was 29, but he's averaged around 15. But I mean, he's a guy who could trend upward, definitely. And I mean, right now he's averaging below $4,000. So definitely another guy to watch.
The last time they played Boston, he had 38 minutes.
Wow. 38 minutes? How many points? Do you know?
26, or average.
Okay.
26.6 fantasy points, sorry.
JR, and I guess JR is hurt as well, his heel, although he might be coming back soon. So, anyone being hurt on that team, obviously, especially if, something serious where Melo's out for an extended period of time. Hardaway Jr. actually has proven to be one of the few guys on that team with upside. And I'm sure if there is some kind of locker room drama between him and Melo about shooting too much, that's what I heard came out is they were both telling each other, you're shooting too much, you're being too selfish. Melo telling Hardaway that, Hardaway probably looking at him like, are you serious? Like, do you know who you are?
Well, the story is about them actually on court during the game.
Yeah.
You hear the rebound story?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. So you could think that maybe there's some personal stuff for him to really shoot a lot more than he already does, and he's proven to be a serviceable scorer. So, all right. Well, the Knicks, our system likes the Celtics, but everyone will be watching the Knicks drama unfold and continue.
When it comes to dysfunction in the NBA, the Knicks, take them every day.
Yeah, the Knicks and the Lakers, honestly.
Yeah,
so,
it's like a giant episode of Jerry Springer.
And I know I'm half joking around, but I'm really not. I mean, if you really truthfully want to right the ship that is the New York Knicks, and you're at all concerned about Carmelo Anthony's knee, you have no reason at all to march him out there every night. Because what's the best case scenario? The Knicks get hot the second half of the year and get the 7 or 8 seed. Ooh,
you get blown out by the Cavs or the Raptors. Yeah.
You know what? And now you don't have a lottery pick. At least if you, this again, like I said before, it's a pretty good draft. At least if you shut Melo down, protect his knee because you're going to need him. I still believe in Carmelo Anthony. I still think he's an elite scorer and a great player. I haven't soured on him necessarily.
Yeah.
You have Tim Hardaway Jr. who's a good player. Shut him down if you're at all concerned about his knee, and go get a lottery pick and see what that becomes.
Agreed. You heard it here first. Melo's getting shut down for the rest of the season. Knicks are tanking. SwishAnalytics.com will have all the updates you need. Thank you all for listening. You can find the SwishCast however you're listening to. You obviously found it, but it will be on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Swish Analytics. You could follow us on Instagram at Swish Analytics. Maybe there's an underscore in there. You can follow us on Snapchat. Friend us, Swish Analytics. We're 6-2 in our Snapchat picks. And again, all of the information for every NFL, NBA game, along with a plethora of data, analytics, predictions, and more at SwishAnalytics.com. Thank you guys all for joining. Ray, happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the Knicks getting beat by the Celtics.
I can't wait. I can't wait to watch that game.
All right, later.